If gods, aliens, or people from other planets have been observing the Earth, they might conclude that humans were attempting to destroy their planet in an orgy of mutual self-destruction and mass suicide on a planetary scale. Our oceans have become cesspools of corruption. Humans have dumped millions of gallons of cancer-causing chemicals, hormones, insecticides, and pharmaceuticals into the water we drink. Huge swaths of the ocean have become dead zones, incapable of sustaining marine life. Our water may someday poison those who drink it and create genetic monsters out of their children. Toxic gases poison the air we breathe, and asthma and cancers have reached epic proportions. Humans have set fire to our planet, burned down ancient forests which recycle and replenish our water and air. Our planet is melting. Sea levels are rising. Thousands of cities will soon sink beneath the sea. And with the loss of the polar ice caps, and as the glaciers of Greenland melt, bacteria and viruses which have been buried and sleeping in the ancient ice, dormant for millions of years, will awaken, multiply, and infect, sicken, and kill those with no immunity, including woman and man. 1,000 new diseases may sweep across the earth, and billions may die. This would not be the first time the people of Earth have been swept from the planet by plague. In the 14th century, a pandemic, the Black Death, swept across Asia, India, and then Europe, killing up to 50% of the population and over 100 million people across 3 continents. In the 16th century, over 70% of the native peoples of the Americas were wiped out by plague. And now, with the melting glaciers, long-dormant bacteria and viruses are being released from their icy prisons, and great nations poison the earth and plan for war. Humans have raced this road for 100 years. It is a highway to global hell, paved with genetic pollution, cancer-causing chemicals, global warming, and a confluence of catastrophes, some man-made, others dictated by the movement of stars, comets, and entire galaxies. Our Milky Way galaxy appears to be made up of 4 main arms that curve around its center like a pinwheel. Our sun and solar system sits on a spiral arm on the outskirts of the Milky Way galaxy, slowly orbiting the glowing galactic center where sits a supermassive black hole, sucking up and swallowing stars and planets. As it sucks up and digests stars and debris, this black hole ejects massive amounts of star-sterilizing energy that can instantly destroy all life on Earth. Currently, our solar system sits on the edge of one of the outer spiral arms and is protected from these energy blasts by innumerable stars within the inner rims and arms of the Milky Way galaxy. Perhaps we are already feeling the effects. Some scientists believe that these galactic energies are contributing to global warming, a trend that grows worse year by year with the ticking of the galactic clock. Indeed, not just the Earth shows global warming, but Mars, some of the moons of Jupiter, and even Pluto at the far edges of our solar system. Be it caused by humans or interactions between our sun and the black hole at the center of our solar system, global warming threatens to end civilization as we know it. If the entire 4.6 billion year history of the Earth were compressed to a single 24-hour day, then fully modern humans have appeared only in the last 15 seconds. Some believe time is running out, and the clock will soon strike 12. This would not be the first time a species has become extinct. Over the course of the 4.6 billion year history of the planet, innumerable species have emerged, thrived, flourished, and then become extinct. Like the jettisoning of the placenta following birth, many species become extinct after having served their genetically programmed biological purpose, which renders them obsolete. For example, just as oxygen was secreted for billions of years as a waste product by innumerable microbes, which enabled oxygen-breathing creatures to evolve, the Ediacaran fauna emerged around 600 million years ago and secreted oceans of calcium carbonate, which in turn made it possible for subsequent species to construct hard shells, bones, and the skeletal system. And then the Ediacaran fauna became extinct. There are several explanations for their demise. Perhaps they were wiped out by disease, or the Earth may have been struck by titanic meteors which so altered the contents of the oceans the Ediacarians were unable to survive. If true, these same meteors not only destroyed life, but they may have contained life, for with the demise of the Ediacarians, there was an explosion of life with all manner of complex creatures appearing in every river, ocean, and stream, an explosion of life collectively referred to as the Cambrian Explosion. Cephalopods, bryozoans, crinoids, graptolites, gastropods, bivalves, sponges, jellyfish, mollusks, brachiopods, arthropods, and jawless fish emerged from nowhere and swam the deep blue sea. Thus, with no history of derivative ancestral forms, all manner of complex creatures, every phylum in existence today, suddenly emerged with bones, brains, and modern eyes during the Cambrian Explosion. Extinction, however, is the nature of life on Earth. The Ediacarians were not the first to suffer obliteration in the history of our planet, nor would they be the last. Most of the species which emerged during the Cambrian Explosion would also be killed off and be eradicated. To die out and become extinct is the nature of life. Like those who came before, most of these species also became extinct. Around 450 million years ago, much of life on Earth was again destroyed by a cosmic catastrophe, triggered by a burst of killer gamma rays. Gamma rays typically last from a few seconds to several minutes and are produced by hyper-supernova, cosmic collisions, and the collapse of neutron stars into superdense black holes which release incredible amounts of deadly radiation. Neutron stars are produced by supernova, and supernovae occur within the spiraling inner arms of our galaxy. And it was a supernova which sent a shower of comets that attacked our solar system and the Earth 13,000 years ago. The dangers they pose are not limited to cometary debris, but gamma rays and massive jets of life-neutralizing energy that could strike the Earth. Our Sun and solar system sits on the spiral arm of Orion, on the sleepy outskirts of the Milky Way galaxy. Within the inner arms and near the galactic center, there is considerable cosmic activity, including supernova, ancient stars exploding with enough energy to completely sterilize and obliterate nearby stars. Gamma rays can easily fry our world and are typically produced as brief but incredibly intense flashes of energy. Most are produced in the far corners of the cosmos, and at that distance are unable to penetrate the Earth's atmosphere. However, a gamma ray burst within 10 light years of the Earth, within our own galaxy, would smash into the upper atmosphere, scattering protective electrons, heating the atmosphere and destroying the protective ozone layer, thus allowing life-neutralizing cosmic rays to strike the planet, burning anything and everything on the surface of the exposed half of the Earth, and leading to mass extinctions. NASA scientists believe that a gamma-ray burst from a star within our own galaxy triggered the Ordovician-Silurian extinction 450 million years ago. The exploding star was believed to have been within 6,000 light-years from Earth on an inner arm of the Milky Way. The gamma-ray burst may have lasted at least 10 seconds, causing extensive damage to half the Earth and the protective ozone and atmosphere of the entire planet, causing surface-dwelling organisms to be exposed to high levels of ultraviolet radiation and depleting the atmosphere of CO2, triggering a global ice age. Although deep-sea creatures would have been protected, photosynthesizing and surface-dwelling animals, including plankton, would not have survived. Thus, it appears that 450 million years ago, 60% of all animal life were killed following a massive gamma-ray burst. We are still in danger. The best predictor of the future is the past, and on December 27, 2004, on the far side of the Milky Way galaxy, between Sagittarius and Ophiuchus, a neutron star exploded and produced a blast of radiation so powerful it bounced off the moon and lit up the atmosphere of the Earth. If the explosion of this neutron star, called SGR 1806-20, had been within 10 light-years of Earth, much of life on this planet, including woman and man, would have died and become extinct. From the ashes of the Ordovician extinction, there followed yet another explosion of life in the ocean and on dry land. The first land-living amphibians, arthropods, wingless insects, and their earliest spiders, arachnids, began to colonize the Earth. And yet, just as death is the ultimate fate of all those who live, for most species, extinction is their ultimate destiny. In many instances, the extinction of individual species is genetically programmed as the next stage of metamorphosis and evolutionary development renders their existence irrelevant. These creatures genetically modify the environment, which acts on gene selection, giving rise to the next stage of evolutionary metamorphosis, the emergence of increasingly complex creatures who go forth into a world which has been genetically planned and prepared for them. Vascular plants re-emerged from the sea, followed by lobe-finned fish whose fleshy lobe fins contain the inner skeletal structure for the emergence of legs. The wiggling motion of a swimming fish is perfect preparation for a fish with lungs whose fins have become feet to crawl across an Earth whose climate, atmosphere, and land have been genetically altered and engineered in preparation for them. The changing environment also acts on gene selection, giving rise to new species, with one stage leading to the next, which often makes predecessors irrelevant, who then become extinct. The creatures of Earth modify the planet by excreting, for example, oxygen as a waste product, which interacts with the environment to create ozone, which protects those on land from ultraviolet radiation. However, cosmic calamities are commonplace, and these disasters also eliminate vast numbers of species who were perfectly adapted for a world that ceases to exist. Mass extinctions are the nature of life. Before the universe could take a breath, the planet was again bombarded by a storm of meteors 364 million years ago, which wiped out most species and bringing the Devonian Age to a catastrophic end. Life can exist under almost any condition, from well below freezing, within pools of acid, in atomic radiation, or within liquid fire miles beneath the surface of the ocean under 7,000 crushing pounds of pressure per square inch. And just as apple seeds contain the DNA instructions to grow apple trees, be it bacteria or the cells of our skin, all contain the genetic DNA instructions for the tree of life and the evolutionary metamorphosis of all life, leading from simple creatures to woman and man. Thus, although innumerable species may perish and go extinct, life carries on, and if provided a life-nourishing environment, continues to the next stage of metamorphosis. Thus, from the carnage of the mass extinction 364 million years ago, complex life again emerged, and amphibians up to 15 feet in length and all manner of creatures began to crawl, slither, and buzz upon the surface of the earth. Amphibians were followed by the more intelligent reptiles who are blessed with a bigger, more complex brain. For almost 100 million years, these primitive reptiles ruled the planet. Mammal-like reptiles also began to crawl upon the earth, including the feared Dimetrodon, who was the top predator during the Permian period. The sail was a primitive means of thermal regulation, releasing heat and absorbing sunlight to maintain the body's temperature. Dimetrodon were among the earliest known synapsids, a transitional species, a bridge between reptile and mammal. Synapsids would eventually give rise to therapsids, who in turn would continue to undergo evolutionary metamorphosis and after several 100 million years give rise to the first mammals. However, the progression of metamorphosis, leading from reptomammals to mammal, would be repeatedly derailed, for like most large creatures of the Permian period, these reptomammals would also go extinct following a cosmic calamity. With the merging together of the world's land masses into one great supercontinent, Pangaea, and as the environment acts on gene selection, the possibility of diversification was magnified, and these first primitive reptiles began to split into three lineages. The anapsids, which include modern reptiles, synapsids, which gave rise to reptomammals and then therapsids, and diapsids, which gave rise to dinosaurs. By 250 million years ago, the reptomammals had gained ascendancy and ruled the earth, and it is from these creatures that the primitive warm-blooded mammals, the therapsids, would descend, eventually giving rise to the first true mammals, then primates, and finally woman and man. But the emerging New World Order was completely toppled 250 million years ago when the planet on our solar system smashed head-on into debris from the dwarf galaxy Sagittarius, which had been snaking around the Milky Way. Stars were being ripped from the Sagittarian Serpentine galaxy and were raining down upon the Milky Way, directly in the path of our Sun and solar system. The Earth was again buffeted by a confluence of catastrophes, including attacks by giant meteors which struck with such force they cracked the Earth and split apart the giant supercontinent, which began drifting apart. The consequences were catastrophic. Volcanoes erupted, oceans of lava flowed across the quaking Earth, and 70% of all land and sea animals were killed. Thus, the Permian extinction has been labeled the Great Dying. For the next 25 million years, the Earth may have continued to be buffeted by storms of meteors, comets, and giant asteroids. Even so, life is resilient, and from the carnage, the therapsids emerged around 250 million years ago. Therapsids were incredibly intelligent and physically superior to all those who had come before them. In contrast to reptiles and amphibians, the legs were now located beneath rather than alongside the body, which enabled therapsids to quickly maneuver and to run long distances without compressing the chest and lungs, which allowed them to simultaneously breathe while chasing prey. Reptiles must stop in order to breathe since their legs, situated alongside their body and chest cavity, constricts the expansion of the lungs as they run. Therapsids were also warm-blooded, which meant they could hunt and reproduce regardless of the weather or climate. By contrast, reptiles must sun themselves, and if a reptile fails to move from a cold to a warm location, their body temperature soon approaches that of the external environment, and they might die. Reptiles were no match for these primitive mammals, the therapsids, who grew to great size and ruled the earth for the next 50 million years. Likewise, the relatively puny, cold-blooded, and primitive egg-laying dinosaurs were no match for the therapsids. Thus, for almost 50 million years, from 250 million until 200 million years ago, the therapsids, in the lineage which would eventually give rise to mammals, then monkeys, apes, and then humans, were kings of the earth. And then the reign of the therapsids also came to a violent end, when the earth was again struck by a hail of meteors, followed by volcanic eruptions which filled the sky with smoke, thus blocking the sun and causing worldwide temperatures to plummet, followed by an intense warming as clouds of greenhouse gases accumulated. The eruptive outpouring of volcanoes, the largest known in the history of the earth, and the dramatic climate changes killed off most of those who survived the initial impact of the meteors. Thus, 200 million years ago, at the end of the Triassic, the reign of the therapsids was brought to a sudden and catastrophic end. 80% of all species were eradicated and disappeared from the face of the earth. The Triassic extinction, 200 million years ago, in which most larger-sized land animals were killed, gave the smaller, egg-laying dinosaurs a competitive advantage. Dinosaurs began to flourish, thrive, multiply, and to diversify, quickly gaining dominion over the earth. Only small pockets of therapsids survived the cataclysm, and they were no match for the dinosaurs who grew to titanic size. Thus, the next stage of mammalian metamorphosis would have to wait 130 million years before another cosmic catastrophe again overturned the New World Order. Dinosaurs emerged from the ashes of the Great Dying and the Triassic extinction and grew to titanic size. The terrible lizards ruled the earth unchallenged, and for 135 million years the giant lizards were king. Compare this to the 50,000-year history of modern woman and man. And then, 65 million years ago, the planet was again struck by life-destroying meteors, and volcanoes erupted across the face of the Earth, filling the skies with smoke and debris, blocking the sun, and plummeting the planet into a nuclear winter that killed tens of millions of animals and plants and sent the largest of beasts, the dinosaurs, into oblivion. In the history of our planet, over 99% of all past species have become extinct. And in the last 100 years, the extinction of species has accelerated, which means If Darwin's tautology is correct, then no one is fit and no one survives. Humans are not immune, and in the last 3 million years, over 12 distinct species of humanity and pre-humanity have become extinct. With the demise of the dinosaurs 65 million years ago, and with the changing New World Order, the more intelligent mammals emerged from the shadows, quickly diversified, and began to rule the day and the night. With the elimination of competitors and the changing environment, and as the environment acts on gene selection, an incredible diversity of mammals, then primates, spread across the planet, with the first monkeys appearing 30 million years ago, and then the first apes 10 million years later. Australopithecus, the name for numerous creatures little different from modern chimpanzees, reigned from 3 million to 1.4 million years ago. And the social life of Australopithecus and later Homo habilis was probably more ape-like than human-like. And then they disappeared from the earth. Perhaps Australopithecus, this species of pre-humanity, was driven to extinction by the completely upright, tool-using Homo habilis who emerged from the mists of time 2.3 million years ago. The major differences between Australopithecus and Homo habilis is a slight increase in the size of the brain and definite tool use among habilis. Habilis stood completely upright compared to Australopithecus, who, like chimps and other small apes, spent as much time in the trees as on the ground. Yet, Homo habilis died out and became extinct by 1.6 million years ago, well before the last of Australopithecus. Humans and our closest genetic relatives are natural-born killers, creatures who murder and torture just for fun, even viciously killing former loved ones, family, and friends. Thus, Homo habilis and Australopithecus may have been the victims of a worldwide campaign of racial and ethnic cleansing, killed off by the bigger-brained Homo erectus, a pre-human species that first walked the earth 1.8 million years ago. Homo erectus were big and robust, with thick brow bridges, large teeth, and bulging shoulder muscles. The brain also doubled in size with the transition from Australopithecus to Homo erectus. Homo erectus were accomplished in the use of tools, and by 1.5 million years ago, they had learned to harness fire. By 500,000 years ago, they were constructing crude shelters and long-term campsites. Like those who came before them, the group collectively referred to as Homo erectus consisted of numerous racial subtypes spread across most of Africa and Eurasia. Female Homo erectus had become sexually receptive and available to have sex at all times, and thus males began to bond with them. With their bigger brains, they erected the first home bases ruled by females who began to selectively mate with males who would provide for them. However, Homo erectus may have also been eradicated by their superiors, nearly disappearing from the face of the planet around 100,000 years ago, with only a few pockets of resistance remaining until 30,000 years before our own time, at which point they became extinct. Archaic Homo sapiens, which include the species Neanderthal, first began to lumber across the face of the earth 300,000 years ago, and with their bigger brain and primitive tool-making abilities, the Neanderthals gained dominion over the planet. Neanderthals were a short, heavily muscled primitive breed with big nostrils, a huge jaw, and sloping forehead. Neanderthals never developed modern human language, and their tool-making and hunting abilities remain limited and unchanged for their entire reign. Indeed, the senior executive of the modern brain, the frontal lobe, was poorly developed, and their ability to engage in creative thought or long-term planning was at the level of a child. Neanderthals were an exceedingly violent, murderous people. Neanderthal skeletal remains betray the cruel ravages of deliberately and violently inflicted wounds. They also engaged in cannibalism and would decapitate fellow Neanderthals and then enlarge the base of each skull so the brains could be scooped out and eaten. And then, out of nowhere, with no clear ancestral antecedents, a completely different species of humanity appeared on the planet around 50,000 years ago. Standing 6 foot tall, with a huge frontal lobe, and a brain 1/3 larger than modern humans, the CroMagnon people had tool-making and artistic abilities that easily surpassed not just the still primitive Neanderthals, but the majority of humans who now dwell upon this planet. The CroMagnon were intellectual giants. They were accomplished artists, musicians, craftsmen, sorcerers, and extremely talented hunters, fishermen, and highly efficient gatherers and herbalists. "30,000 years ago, the CroMagnon constructed underground cathedrals covered with artistic creations that often utilized the contours of the walls to make their paintings lifelike and fluid. Many of their paintings show a complete mastery of geometric awareness, and they often use the natural contours of the cave walls, including protuberances, to create a three-dimensional effect. Many of their paintings and drawings were multidimensional, with drawings within drawings, often obscured by multiple lines, which represented five-dimensional and superimposed subliminal images that shared vital lines with one another. Only a highly developed intelligence, reflected perhaps by their large brain and frontal lobe, could have created, appreciated, and understood these incredible abstractions. Compared to those who had come before or after them, and until the advent of the 20th century, these people were giants, and they may well have appeared as gods, at least to the Neanderthals who managed to hang on for another 10,000 years after the CroMagnons had appeared on the scene. The origins of the CroMagnon peoples, however, are completely unknown. There are no transitional forms that link them with the Neanderthals. Neanderthals did not evolve into CroMagnons, and they coexisted for almost 15,000 years until finally the Neanderthals disappeared from the face of the earth around 30,000 years ago. 35,000 years ago, CroMagnon were painting animals not only on walls but on ceilings, utilizing rich yellows, reds, and browns in their paintings and employing the actual shape of the cave walls so as to conform with and give lifelike dimensions, including the illusion of movement to the creatures they were depicting. Musicians, artists, great hunters, they also observed the heavens and the movement of the stars and engaged in complex religious rituals based on cosmology. Note, for example, this CroMagnon goddess with her hand on her belly and holding a sliver of moon notched 13 times. 30,000 years ago, they understood that woman's menstrual cycle corresponded with the cycles of the moon, and both had periods of 13 cycles in a solar year, 13 new moons, and 13 menstrual cycles. The Neanderthals were no match for these big-brained giants, and by 30,000 years ago, the Neanderthals were completely eradicated. The 6-foot-tall CroMagnon, who stood 4 inches taller and with a brain 1/3 larger than modern humans, gained dominion over much of the planet. These incredibly intelligent people, the creator of the first underground cathedrals, what might they have accomplished over the next 20,000 years? According to the ancient scholars of Sumer, Egypt, Babylon, Greece, and the Americas, a technologically advanced people gained dominion over the earth and built great sparkling cities and developed technologically advanced civilizations that ringed the globe over 15,000 years ago. The ancient Babylonians identify 5 of these cities by name. The ancient Egyptians named kings who ruled 15,000 years ago, and the Aztec, Mayas, and Incas named the gods who ruled this ancient world. The famed Greek philosopher Plato names 2 of these ancient civilizations, which he says existed 9,000 years before his own time, and which were then destroyed by a cosmic calamity. "13,000 years ago, North America was a beautiful, bountiful country. The glaciers were in retreat, and in Canada and large swaths of the United States, the melting glaciers formed a dam around this giant inland sea, preventing a runoff into the Atlantic. As reported in 2007 at the American Geophysical Union, 13,000 years ago, a huge comet, 2.5 miles across, exploded above North America, melting the huge glacial ice sheets, causing massive flooding and a frigid drop in the Earth's temperature, killing an unknown number of people and wiping out and causing the extinction of 35 large species of mammal, including the giant mammoths. According to nuclear scientist Richard Firestone of the U.S. Department of Energy, this comet was just one among tens of thousands of comet-like missiles which were sent hurtling towards the Earth, remnants of a distant star which exploded in a vast supernova. These meteor storms were accompanied by a hail of cometary bullets which struck the Earth, machine gunning innumerable animals and humans with iron-rich grains traveling at 10,000 kilometers per second. When this giant comet exploded above North America, these natural glacial dams melt and burst, and enormous quantities of cold, fresh water drained into the North Atlantic in a deluge. This had the effect of shutting down the normal circulation of the ocean's cooling cycle, where warm water and cool water are mixed in the North Atlantic and the Gulf Current. Surface water turned frigid, and temperatures plummeted, and ocean levels rose by up to 400 feet, causing massive flooding and the destruction of all civilizations worldwide. Those striking the ocean sent plumes of mist and water into the air, which fell in torrential rains, whereas those striking the earth set up plumes of smoke and debris, blocking the sun and sending temperatures plummeting. The climate of much of the world was altered within seconds, and innumerable animals were flash frozen even as they ate. Woolly mammoths and other animals have been found frozen solid with gravel in their lungs and grass in their mouths and food in their belly. Carcasses dated from 13,000 years ago. As is evident from their diet and the food in their mouths, these calamitous events took place in the most inviting of environments, which just moments before had been warm, lush, and teeming with life. These animals were flash frozen alive as they ate and inhaled cometary debris. Humans in affected areas were completely obliterated. Up to 75% of the population of North America alone were killed. Indeed, the oldest records and accounts passed down through history tell the same tragic tale. These great kingdoms and city-states were completely obliterated and washed away by violent earthquakes, volcanoes, floods, and a terrifying cosmological events symbolized by a great serpent. The earth shook, sea levels rose, cities and great expanses of land fell beneath the waves, leaving only distant memories of a long-lost golden age. Many comets circle our solar system and can take hundreds or even tens of thousands of years to complete a single orbit. Some orbit once and then exit the solar system, apparently never to return. In July of 1994, huge chunks of a giant comet named Shoemaker-Levy slammed into Jupiter at a speed of 135,000 miles per hour, punching holes in the upper atmosphere many times the size of the Earth. This giant comet had broken into fragments due to Jupiter's incredible gravitational tidal forces, yet many of the comet's 21 separate pieces were over 1 mile, 2 kilometers, in size. On July 18th, a huge chunk of this comet hit Jupiter with the explosive power of over 6 million megatons of TNT, which is the equivalent of 600 times all the nuclear weapons on Earth exploding at the same time. Temperatures on Jupiter soared to over 24,000 degrees Kelvin. Over a 6-day period, 21 separate pieces of this comet slammed into Jupiter. It was as if Jupiter had been struck with all the nuclear weapons on Earth 25,000 times, the equivalent of over 600 million nuclear weapons exploding over a 6-day period. Enough firepower to destroy our planet and eradicate all life. If these 21 separate pieces of the Shoemaker-Levy comet had slammed into the Earth, our planet would not have survived. There are millions of meteors and asteroids orbiting in our solar system, and many times more probably have not yet been detected. Currently, NASA has detected over 5,000 asteroids, comets, and meteors which are big enough and close enough to our planet to pose a real danger. Moreover, the trajectory of comets and asteroids can be altered by the gravitational influences of the planets or other asteroids which may crash into them. In 2007, as Comet Holmes careened towards the inner solar system, it exploded as it reached the asteroid belt between Jupiter and Mars, increasing 1,000,000 times in brightness and expanding several times the diameter of the Sun. Some scientists assume Comet Holmes exploded from heat generated as it approached the Sun. Possibly frozen ice trapped inside began to melt, turned to gas, and as the pressures increased, it exploded, sending a shower of debris which may have struck other meteors inside the asteroid belt. There are millions of meteors and asteroids orbiting in the belt between Jupiter and Mars. Other scientists believe it may have collided with the asteroid belt, in which case debris would have ricocheted among the meteors, scattering them like so many mile-wide billiard balls, banging upon one another and sending tens of thousands of meteors in all directions, including towards the Earth. One need only gaze at the meteor-cratered surface of Mercury, Mars, and the Moon to see undeniable evidence that we live in the middle of a very dangerous cosmic shooting gallery. However, our Sun, our solar system, and thus the Earth are also in orbit around the Milky Way, taking approximately 250 million years to completely circle the galaxy. And it was 250 million years ago that the Earth suffered the Great Dying, in which over 70% of all animal and sea life were destroyed by a confluence of catastrophes, including titanic meteors which continued to periodically rain down upon the planet, causing yet another major extinction. 250 million years ago, our solar system may have drifted between the jaws of that serpentine dwarf galaxy, Sagittarius, which is stretched out and snakes round the Milky Way in an endless cycle of cosmic destruction. As reported on December 20th, 2003, in the prestigious Astrophysical Journal, the stars of Sagittarius are being slowly stripped away by the massive gravitational tidal forces of the Milky Way. These wayward stars are raining down upon our galaxy, some being torn apart, others joining the great circular dance around the Milky Way. Moreover, our solar system has repeatedly crossed the path of Sagittarius and has repeatedly orbited through its debris, likely accounting for some of the mass extinctions which have plagued the Earth. Unfortunately for the Earth, after 250 million years, our solar system appears to be on yet another head-on collision with the Sagittarian Serpentine galaxy. As reported in the Astrophysical Journal by Professor Stephen Majewski and colleagues, stars from Sagittarius are now raining down upon our present position in the Milky Way. Stars from an alien galaxy are relatively near us. The best predictor of the future is the past. It is not a question of if, but when. If we do not destroy the planet with pollution or a worldwide nuclear war, meteors and asteroids will most certainly strike the Earth, and much of life on this planet will surely come to an end. The question for all of humanity: what are we going to do about it?